In the United States, Congress has until midnight this Saturday to prevent a technical government shutdown. Russia and Venezuela signed an interparliamentary cooperation agreement to strengthen bilateral relations. And in Zimbabwe, authorities report at least 6 miners dead and over 40 still trapped underground after a mine collapsed in Chigutu district. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Argentina's working class mobilized in support of presidential candidate and current economy minister Sergio Massa. During his speech before the large gathering, Massa affirmed that the elimination of the income tax is a step forward to start repairing the mistakes and injuries that the country's economy is suffering. The economy minister urged retirees, beneficiaries of the universal salary, and workers of the popular economy to join him in requesting that the law that returns the income tax to the workers be passed before Congress. In Ecuador, preparations continue for the presidential debate between the candidates Luisa González of the Citizen Revolution and Daniel Noboa of National Democratic Action. The debate will take place on October 1st at 7 p.m. local time at the headquarters of Ecuador TV channel. The Metropolitan Transit Agency and the National Electoral Council informed that due to the meeting of both presidential aspirants, the surrounding areas are closed for vehicular traffic, thus guaranteeing security. In this sense, González and Noboa will discuss for an hour and a half their proposals on 4 main issues: economy, security, social inclusion, and policies. On October 15th, Ecuadorians will go to the polls to choose the nation's next president after Guillermo Lasso implemented on May the so-called cross-death to bring his term to an early end. Brazil's Minister of Racial Equality, Aniel Franco, demanded police protection after suffering hate attacks on social media. The official asked authorities to open an investigation due to the multiple messages of racism and intimidation that she has received during last week. According to local media, the threats against the minister intensified after the ministry fired Marcel Decote, one of Franco's former advisors who had attacked supporters of the Sao Paulo soccer club on social media. In 2018, Marielle Franco, the minister's sister and feminist counselor, had also been the victim of constant threats prior to her murder. In the United States, the federal government asserted that there is still an opportunity to avoid a technical shutdown. Shalanda Young, director of the White House Budget Office, was optimistic about the possibility of avoiding a budget impasse and pointed out that deadline expires at midnight this Saturday. The Senate reached a short-term commitment this week that would give policymakers additional time for a final deal, but the initiative failed in the House of Representatives, where supporters of Donald Trump refused to support any legislation that includes financial aid for Ukraine. It is not the first time the government has been close to a collapse, being closed for over 30 days between the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019. The only way to prevent U.S. civil employees from becoming technically unemployed is a last-minute agreement between the two parties. A possible temporary government shutdown in the United States could affect several areas essential for the proper functioning of the state. Nearly 1.5 million federal civil servants and some 2 million military personnel will not receive their paychecks. Air traffic and airport security would be delayed, as air traffic controllers and transportation security agency officials will work without pay. It is also estimated that social protection programs such as pensions, hospital medical services, among others, will also be affected by the budget crisis. Let's take now a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. The governments of Russia and Venezuela signed an interparliamentary cooperation agreement to strengthen bilateral relations. The information was made public by the lower house of the Russian Federal Assembly on its official website. According to the published document, the signing of these agreements took place after a meeting between the President of the Russian State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, and the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, within the framework of the International Conference Russia-Latin America. Both parties shared their position on the significance of these agreements, stressing that it will serve to promote development through interparliamentary dialogue and expand bilateral cooperation ties. In the framework of his visit to Moscow, the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, presented a wreath at the monument to the Latin American liberator Simón Bolívar. Prior to this act, Rodriguez visited the monument to the unknown soldier, where he also presented a wreath in recognition of the bloodshed by the Russian people during the Second World War to guarantee the victory of the Allied forces against Nazism. The Venezuelan delegation of parliamentarians in Russia is part of their visit to the first International Russia-Latin America Parliamentary Conference to be held in Moscow from September 29th to October 2nd. On Saturday, the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, paid tribute with a wreath at the monument of the liberator Simón Bolívar in Russia.
Next to the statue of the Hero of America, in a beautiful tribute that the people of the city of Moscow have made to our liberator Simón Bolívar and his libertarian deed of the American continent. Very moved to bring a wreath to this monument that portrays the glory of the greatest of America, our liberator Simón Bolívar.
The President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, emphasized that this meeting between parliamentary representatives of Latin America is propitious not only for the meeting of peoples, but should serve to provide solutions to the problems that affect the nations.
This is an event for peace in this meeting of Russian parliamentarians. Russia and Latin America for peace, for parliaments to be the main instrument of cooperation, the instrument of encounter and instrument of searching common solutions to the problems that afflict our people.
In Spain, residents in Sevilla marched on Saturday to reject the rising inflation the country is experiencing. Demonstrators claim that as a result of the inflationary crisis, fundamental goods and public services in Spain have reported an increase in cost. Likewise, they denounced the increase in water, electricity and gas bills of up to 40%. In this sense, protesters say the high cost of living makes it difficult for them to carry out their daily tasks, as well as to buy food and other supplies. Locals call on the authorities to solve their problems, while warning the current crisis is worse because public services are in the hands of private companies.
We find ourselves in an increasingly precarious situation where we understand that we have no way out. With the pandemic, they took advantage, cutting healthcare and public education budgets, and also diverted all the money to the private sector.
Pope Francis has raised 21 clergymen from distant corners of the world to the rank of cardinals. At the ceremony known as the Consistory, the ninth under Pope Francis, the 86-year-old Pope said diversity is indispensable for the future of the Catholic Church, which currently has 1.3 billion believers worldwide. The choice of the new cardinals, who include diplomats, close advisors, and administrators, is closely watched as an indicator of the priorities and position of the Church. One of these newly appointed cardinals could eventually be elected by his peers to succeed Francis, who has hinted he could be stepping down should his health warrant it. On Saturday, Slovakia holds legislative elections to determine the country's foreign policy, including a possible hold to the support for neighboring Ukraine, one of the main issues of the campaign. Over 4 million citizens were called to cast their votes in these elections. The race will decide between the Smer SD party of former Prime Minister Robert Fico and the progressive Slovakia formation of Michael Zemeka, Vice President of the European Parliament. The winner will need the support of other smaller parties to achieve a majority in the 150-seat Congress. The resulting government will replace the center-right coalition cabinet in power since 2020. Voters attending the polling centers stressed the importance of these elections to bring changes for the country.
Elections are important to me so that something changes in the country. Our political culture and behavior of politicians has sunk very low, and it would be good if it changed. I also think that our children deserve a dignified future.
Politicians should change their attitude and stop bragging about how supposedly honest they are about helping everyone from the poorest to the middle class. They ought to stop lying.
In the Maldives, where nearly all ballot boxes counted, the candidate of the opposition Progressive Party of the Maldives-led coalition won 53% of the votes, while incumbent President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih obtained 46%. Mohamed Muizu, now president-elect, is the current mayor of the capital Male. Solih's defeat to Muizu marks the first time Maldivians have voted out a liberal democratic government since the country held its first multi-party elections in 2008. Parliament Speaker and former President Mohamed Nasheed congratulated Muizu on his apparent second-round victory. The election was seen as a referendum on whether to hitch its fortunes to China or India. Muizu helms a party that presided over an influx of Chinese investment money when it last held power and has signaled a return to Beijing's orbit. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, there you'll be able to re-watch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For a short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Zimbabwe, about 40 mine employees in Chakari, Chegutu district are reportedly trapped underground, and at least 6 deaths reported after the mine collapsed Friday morning. Rescuers warned that the death toll could rise as debris removal, search and rescue efforts continue. They also detailed that the number of people trapped underground is not yet known. However, according to the records, more than 40 people were in the mine at the moment when the walls collapsed. Some of these workers managed to get out quickly before the earth began to move. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, opposition politician Martin Fayulu confirms his candidacy for the presidential election to be held on December 20th. Fayulu will face current President Felix Tshisekedi, who has been in power since January 2019 and is standing for re-election.
Having listened to the people's urgent request, the Lamuka coalition has decided to submit my candidacy for the presidential election in December 2023. We are going to continue to fight to demand greater transparency in the elections, just as we didn't achieve transparency through the audit of the electoral register. We will achieve it through election monitoring. We fully agree with the CENCSO ECC electoral observation mission that, and I quote, transparency and inclusion are a lever for peace and stability in the Democratic Republic of Congo before, during and after the elections. Thank you very much.
Burkina Faso's military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, said elections are not a priority compared to security. Traoré, who had promised a return to elections by July 2024, also announced planned changes to the constitution to make it representative of the masses. Yet the military leader reported that the priority is the fight against the extremist groups to protect the Burkinabe people. When Traoré seized power, he gave himself 2 to 3 months to improve security in the country, but 1 year on extremist attacks still blight the West African nation. Burkina Faso said on Thursday that 4 officers had been detained a day after the military government announced it had thwarted a coup attempt. In Ouagadougou, people rallied in support of Ibrahim Traoré and shared their views almost exactly 1 year to the day after he took power in a coup.
In this year, we have seen a lot of change. There has been a lot of change. There has been fewer attacks, fewer displaced people, and he's taking a step that really goes to my heart. Opening factories for young people in Burkinabe. It's really incredible.
1 year on, a very satisfactory record, and no Burkinabe can say otherwise, because first of all, we can see what the captain has already done and put a lot of village back in place. That's already an achievement for us, and we are proud of him and we trust him, and we know we are going to win this war against the evildoers.
In Palestine, a new Israeli attack left 1 young Palestinian dead and another injured According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, the young man died as a result of severe gunshot wounds in the town of Al-Bihre. Israeli soldiers set up a roadblock at the entrance of the settlement and opened fire on the vehicle in which the two youth were traveling. According to the Palestinian Red Crescent, Israeli occupation forces prevented the entry of rescue teams to the scene of the incident. Local media claimed that the wounded youth were transported on stretchers by the military to the settlement before the arrival of Israeli ambulances to the scene. Syria's defense ministry announced a series of ground and air operations that destroyed terrorist headquarters and shot down drones in the northwest of the country. According to the ministry, Syrian artillery units shelled extremist command headquarters, eradicating several members of these armed gangs. The defense authorities detailed that these actions were in response to the attacks of the terrorist groups against civilian communities and army posts in Aleppo, Latakia, and Idlib provinces. The most recent was by means of several drones, of which two were shot down in Latakia and one in Aleppo. According to the Ministry of Defense, since the beginning of September, at least 111 terrorists have been eliminated in operations carried out in Idlib and Hama provinces in northwest Syria. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSURenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.